My name is Maggie, and I am a survivor of many intersections. In my teens and early 20s, Disney's animated movie Pocahontas, a movie I was deeply drawn to as a nature-loving child, was the only movie I would watch for comfort while I was experiencing my undiagnosed PTSD. At age 21, after enduring emotional abuse from my then boyfriend, I self-harmed in a severe way. I had been self-harming for years, but this scarring was quite significant. It was a deep shame for me to have people see and question what had happened, so I chose to get a tattoo to cover it. I decided on this profile of Disney's Pocahontas as a way to cover it and as a way to bring myself comfort when I felt the 5-inch long raised skin. Over the years, I have become more active in learning from Indigenous voices and values and bringing compassionate care and awareness to the crises they continue to face. Learning about the true history of a young woman named Matoaka, the shame of the scar became replaced with the shame of the cultural insensitivity I had permanently etched into my skin. For so long, I didn't know how to correct it. To laser and cover this tattoo felt like a further erasure of Indigenous women. So instead, I'm following their lead, and I'm going to add to this tattoo to honor Matoaka and bring awareness to the harm Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit persons continue to endure. As I get tattooed today, I will be sharing the true history of Matoaka's tragic life and what is happening in Indian country. Born in 1596 with the name Amanut, Matoaka meaning flower between two streams, as she was born between the two rivers that the Mattapanai culture thrived with. The nickname Pocahontas came later in her childhood. Pocahontas was the name of her mother, who sadly died during the birth of Matoaka. Pocahontas was a cherished wife of the Powhatan chief, and as Matoaka grew, he lovingly referred to her as Pocahontas, which means playful one. As a young daughter of the Powhatan chief, who was a leader to 30 Algonquian-speaking tribes, she was very closely watched and kept safe by her tribal members. She was only around age 10 when John Smith first came to their homeland. He was feared for his impulsive cruelty, having been known to point guns to the heads of chiefs, demanding various tribe supplies. It is very unlikely she ever spoke to Smith, let alone save his life and fall in love with him. When Matoaka was around age 16 in the early 17th century, English colonization and violence towards Indigenous people became more rampant. The Mattapanai had been helping the colonizers survive with the giving of food, but when one bad year led to lower crop yields, the Powhatan chief prioritized his people. Demanding food during starvation, colonizers threatened to burn down villages if not fed. Giving little they had wasn't enough, as soon women and children became victims of rape, and rumors of Matoaka being a target for kidnapping started to spread through the villages. Though initially set up by her father and a neighboring tribal chief, Matoaka and a warrior from the neighboring tribe named Kocoum did actually marry for love, but also in the hopes of better protection for Matoaka. They quite quickly had a child together, living in Kocoum's tribal village, but distressingly enough, an English captain by the name of Samuel Argall, hoping to use Matoaka as a ransom, found her family. After the killing of her beloved husband, Matoaka was forced to leave her 1-year-old child behind and board Argall's ship. She left to protect everyone else of that village. Held captive in the depths of his ship, waiting for negotiations to work out between the clashing of cultures with her father and Captain Argall, her father was cruelly misled by Argall. Once the Powhatan chief released a number of English prisoners for his daughter's safe return, Argall turned on that agreement and stated that Matoaka was now a trade for a copper pot he had given some time prior. This was by no means acceptable, and it broke her father's heart as Argall kidnapped Matoaka, breaking their agreement and taking her to the coast of Jamestown, where her sister and brother-in-law were granted to visit her. It is in Mattapanai history that while being held captive for an entire year, Matoaka shared with her family members that she had been raped repeatedly by various crew members under Argall. This is her last known contact with her people before being trafficked to England. In England, she had another child and had a marriage to John Rolfe, though the child was not Rolfe's, but one from her rapist. The child carried the Rolfe name, and both of her children lived to carry on future generations that live today. Matoaka was assimilated into Christianity and English culture, but it is believed by some that she was poisoned, and others say it was tuberculosis. She died in 1617 at the age of 25. Either way of her death, her life and death are a tragic history, a history of violence that has never stopped. Matoaka was one of the first missing and murdered Indigenous women. This genocide of Native women and of Native culture has never ended. To date, there is no known number of how many Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit are missing. The most complete data is only from 2016, where it has been reported that there were 5,712 missing women in that year alone. Each of those missing lives, only 116 made it into the federal missing persons database. In 1978, the Supreme Court ruled it just that non-natives committing crime on reservation lands did not need to be prosecuted by the federal government. The racist cruelty of this Christian-founded nation has never ended. There is no protection for these most marginalized people. Even the data that the media has recently started sharing is old data. It is no longer just 1 in 3 Indigenous women experiencing sexual violence. The most recent data collected by Native researchers found that it is actually 94% of Indigenous women, with an overwhelming majority of perpetrators being non-Native and a majority of Indigenous women's first experience of sexual violence starting at age 13. The cruelty of our government to not only turn its back on providing any resources or legislation to help protect Native people is deplorable enough, but to be the ones allowing this violence to keep existing shows quite simply how ordered massacres led by the U.S. Army and cavalry in the 18th and 19th centuries has transformed into a free-for-all hunting ground for anyone with hate in their heart. And the same hate is spewed from local law enforcement when Indigenous families desire accountability in finding their missing daughters and sisters. They blame every victim, stating that they either got drunk and died of exposure or completed suicide. An outright refusal to investigate, let alone bring home any of the thousands upon thousands missing children, women, and queer identity Native persons. My name is Maggie, and I'm a survivor of many intersections with no Native blood. I'm a generational trauma survivor. I'm a sexual harassment survivor. I am a psychiatric abuse survivor. I am a rape survivor. I am a sexual assault survivor. I am a domestic violence survivor. I am a substance misuse survivor. I am a self-harm survivor. I am a suicide loss survivor, and I am a suicide attempt survivor. And I'm turning this truly inaccurate, grossly romanticized, and let's never forget profitable portrayal of a real woman who suffered in ways I have and beyond into a piece that will bring awareness to the violence Indigenous women have been inescapably chained to for over 500 years everywhere I go. I carry their stories in my skin as I have lived such stories myself and carry them in my own heart. We must protect our Indigenous communities, fight for justice for sexual violence survivors, for those who have been murdered, and for those still missing. Fight to end the continuance of such cruelty. See the humanity of our Native families and feel the weight of such suffering and do something. After holding a fundraiser last December for MMIW and becoming friends with one of the leaders of this cause, I have been graciously welcomed to a conference for MMIW in May of this year. I'm happy to take donations for their tireless efforts of bringing awareness, fighting for justice, and for their very humanity to simply be seen. All donations sent to me will be sent to the Global Indigenous Council, where a collection of tribal leaders will have the power to do what they feel is best for the safety of their communities. Indigenous women deserve safety. Listen to Chief Joseph. Stop just using good words and start doing something.